Hello students, from this class we will be taking on mineral metabolism and we will be starting today with calcium and phosphorus metabolism. You must be knowing that mineral metabolism is included in your syllabus curriculum and it is described in competency BI 6.9 and 6.10. So 6.9 says function of various minerals in their body, their metabolism and homeostasis, and 6.10, that is 6.10, says describe various disorders associated with mineral metabolism. Alright. Now MCI doesn't tell you what minerals are important. Alright. So technically all the minerals are important. Right. So but importance varies according to their biophysical or biochemical role in the body. Right. So based on that, today we will be focusing on calcium and phosphorus, and I will also be telling you what minerals you need to focus. So in this class, from this lecture session, you should be able to learn, okay. You should be able to explain the function of calcium, its dietary sources and the recommended dietary allowance, the RDA. You should also be able to describe the factors that regulate blood calcium level, okay, how the calcium level maintains its homeostasis in blood. You should also be able to enumerate, name few causes of hypo and hypercalcemia, and similar question for phosphorus. Okay, we will be discussing phosphorus in last few slides because it is not as important as calcium is. Okay, it is very important, but questions related to calcium are much more compared to phosphorus. Now, as I was telling you, what are the important minerals? Now these are the important minerals, important from our body function perspective, okay, not from your question perspective. Yes, as I told you, questions do come from all of them, especially if you are preparing for PG level MCQs. Questions from all of them are important, but for your UG level we will be discussing calcium and phosphorus today. Remember, sodium, potassium, chloride, these are more important because electrolytes are generally asked with other biochemical feature, but long questions will not come from them. Long questions will come from three important, rather two. Number one is calcium and number two is iron. Okay, from the other minerals you will get short notes and explain why type of question. For example, copper, selenium, zinc. We will be taking on the important minerals in our lecture series in classes to follow, but for this class, calcium and phosphorus. We are discussing calcium and phosphorus in this class because if you are following my videos, you must be knowing few days back we took on vitamin D, alright, and vitamin D, during teaching vitamin D, I told you it plays a vital role in metabolism of calcium and phosphorus. So I will request you to watch that video if you have not watched it, and then you can carry on with this video. So let us wrap up few things first because these things are basically not conceptual. You need to commit to your memory only. Okay, that is the percentages, RDAs and the sources. That's the thing is, calcium in human body is about 1 to 1.5 kg and 99% of which is seen in the bone. Now you must be wondering that majority of our bone weight is of calcium. So why human body has only 1 to 1.5 kg of calcium? Okay, let me tell you the dry weight of the fluorapatite or hydroxyapatite, that is the calcium salt present in bone, is not the only thing that contributes to the bone weight. There are much more important stuff, the matrix and the trabeculae and the marrow, those are not calcium. Okay, just remember this thing. And 1% of calcium, 99% is in bone and 1% is in the ECF, that is extracellular fluid. The regarding sources of calcium, I don't need to tell you, you already know milk. Okay, but one thing is important, cereals. In case of Indian diet, cereals are the major source of calcium because many section of our country cannot afford milk. Okay, milk is a luxury to them, but all of them, I think and I know, have got access to cereal as per World Health Organization community data. So remember, in case of Indian diet, cereals are a major source of calcium. Okay, however, the most important and the best source of calcium is still milk, in which in case of cow's milk it is about 100 milligram per 100 ml or 1 milligram per ml. Okay. Moving on, regarding the dietary requirement of calcium, it is 500 mg per day adult. Okay, it's mostly met from our dietary staple dietary habits. If you are having a balanced diet, if you want to know what's balanced diet, you can check my nutrition video. Now, all of you must be aware that calcium and iron are two such supplements that are given in huge doses to pregnant women, because requirement of calcium, you know, the bone development of the newborn baby, that's why in case of pregnancy the requirement is excess. Also, in case of postmenopausal women after the age of 50, due to hormonal action, the bone starts decaying. So, patients of osteoporosis needs both calcium and vitamin D supplementation. Okay. So, you must know that you must be knowing that calcium supplementations are available over the counter. Okay. I mean calcium Sandoz and Shelcal, those are all tablets that are available in Indian market. So, how they are absorbed? They are absorbed in the first and second part of the duodenum, very important, in upper GIT. Okay. Now, it needs a protein to get the thing absorbed from the intestinal mucosa to the basolateral side. So, it's an active process. So, it is absorbed against a concentration gradient. You know, any active process that requires energy, it's against the concentration gradient. So, this thing, calcium dependent ATPase, and it requires a carrier protein. So, remember from your ion channels and all that chapter, you must be knowing symport, antiport, uniport, all those things, active process, passive process. So, diffusion is a passive process. This active process are the processes which needs energy and thus happen again the concentration gradient. So, this thing, that concept is applicable over here. Now, out of a standard, that is 500 mg per day dose of a either natural occurring from natural calcium from your diet or from the calcium Sandoz tablet which you are taking, 400 mg is excreted in stool and 100 milligram is excreted through urine. So, this is the normal oral to excretory cycle of calcium. To give you a brief idea, just remember, if you cannot remember all of these, just remember two things from this slide. Number one, it is 500 mg per day, and number two, that is it is absorbed against the concentration gradient in upper GI tract using a protein. Now, there are various factors that influences this calcium absorption. Some will increase and some will decrease, right? From our vitamin D class, I will be referring to my previous vitamin D class a lot. Every slide almost has got a connection to that class. So, I hope you watch this video and you go and watch that video, or you have watched this video. I will be telling this over and over again. So, it may feel repetitive, but that it is that much important. So, what increases the absorption of calcium? Of course, vitamin D. Vitamin D is one of the sole factors that increases calcium, and I told you in that class parathormone also contributes the same. The pH, low pH supports calcium absorption, okay, and few amino acid like lysine and arginine also helps or aids in absorption of calcium. So, remember, these are the few factors that help in calcium absorption, and you need to keep in mind few factors that also inhibits absorption of calcium. Those are phytates and oxalate. I told you in my previous vitamin D class, phytic acid, oxalate, these are the few things that prevent in absorption of calcium. So, calcium supplementation in diet and inclusion of these things in diet should be spaced, okay. Few leafy vegetables will hamper, so it should not be taken with milk. Therefore, the calcium of milk will not be absorbed. So, proper dietitian or diet plan should be made in that way. And in few diseases like malabsorption syndrome, when all things are hampered in absorption of everything is hampered, calcium will also be hampered, right? Now this is the tricky part. High concentration of phosphate will also prevent absorption of calcium. Why? We absorb calcium in its ionic form. So Ca++ calcium cation is absorbed by the ion channel. However, excess phosphorus, what will it will do? It will combine with calcium and it will precipitate calcium in form of calcium phosphate. So excess phosphate in diet also inhibits the absorption of calcium. So the optimum ratio of calcium to phosphorus is allow maximum absorption is 1.2, 1:2 to 2:1. Okay, if one of them, or if phosphorus is in excess of that will hamper absorption of calcium. So actually you can see it's quite a huge relaxation is there. It means phosphorus can be twice that of calcium and phosphorus can be half of that of calcium. Okay, this is the optimal ratio. So just remember 1:2 to 2:1. So calcium can be low, phosphorus can be double, and calcium can be double, phosphorus can be half, like that. But if phosphorus is present in so much excess, if it is present 3 times to that of the calcium available in diet, it will actually form a complex and that will harm the absorption of calcium. This should be a familiar diagram. We explained it in action of vitamin D. Similarly, same thing is happening over here because it is nothing but calcitriol, which is binding to its cell surface receptor. It is triggering a hormone responsive element. It is triggering transcription inside the cell via nuclear receptor. It triggers synthesis of calbindin, and calbindin is the protein that is helping in absorption of calcium against the concentration gradient in intestine. I am not going into this detail because we did it elaborately in the previous class. Now this is important. You can take a break if you want, because the next part is a long question, or it may come as a part of long question, that is calcium, how calcium goes in and out of the cell. So what are the channels that help in calcium influx or efflux? You need to know calcium is mainly extracellular. It is present outside the cell, okay, and then it gets in, but it is impermeable. The cell membrane doesn't allow calcium to freely flow. So how does it get in? It gets in with the help of an exchanger system, okay, that is in exchange of sodium and calcium. Okay, it can get in, fine, and that has a low affinity for calcium. This exchange system, this mechanism is rapid, the exchange happens fast, but generally this exchanger only allows calcium if the calcium concentration is very high, okay, or if a calcium is truly needed inside the cell. This is not an active mechanism, or this is not a ATP dependent system, okay. How it happens, I will tell you. See, you know about the sodium potassium ATPase pump. Sodium potassium ATPase pump is a pump which leads to transfer of 3 sodium ions and 2 potassium ions with the help of ATP, okay. This is just an exchange system, it doesn't require energy. For influx of calcium, that is for calcium to come into the cell from outside. Now what happens once the calcium is inside? Once calcium is inside, it has to go into the subcellular organelle, mainly mitochondria. That happens with the help of a calcium uniport system, that is unidirectional channel. You must be knowing these types of channels from your channel classes, okay. You know different types of channel: active transport, passive transport, diffusion, osmosis. So diffusion is a passive process, this symport, antiport, these are all active process, okay, they need energy. So uniport is a channel in which only calcium will flow into the mitochondria. So calcium will get into the mitochondria with the help of this uniport system. Now how the calcium will get out? Calcium will get out with the help of this antipode system, sodium calcium antipode system, which in turn is dependent on sodium hydrogen ATPase. If it sounds super confusing, I'll make you understand. See, the influx, okay, when calcium is coming in, it is mainly coming in because calcium is mainly extracellular. A lot of calcium is present outside the cell. So, exchanger lets it in freely. But when it needs to get out, it needs an energy source, because now it will happen against the concentration gradient. So, from it needs an ATP. So, who will allow or supply this ATP? That is a sodium hydrogen ATPase pump. This sodium hydrogen ATPase pump is present on the mitochondrial surface. Okay, and this is called calcium pump. This sodium calcium antipode system together with the sodium hydrogen ATPase pump, this is known as calcium pump. I'll show you in a diagram, but remember, other calcium channels are voltage operated channels and second messenger operated channels. Okay, see, this is a overview of all the channels that is present in cell surface for calcium. This sodium calcium exchanger. So, normally sodium goes out and calcium comes in. This is an exchange mechanism that does not need energy. Okay, this calcium will then get into the mitochondria by a uniport system. Okay, now when the function is done, the calcium is now going to find its way to get out, but it cannot do that on its own. It needs energy to go out via the antipode system. Okay, the antipode system is not shown in this diagram, but it functions similarly. Now what happens? Calcium will go out and sodium will come in. That is simply the reverse of this exchanger, and that will need energy from sodium hydrogen ATPase that is present on mitochondria. So, together this thing along with the sodium hydrogen ATPase is known as calcium pump. Okay, a channel that is an antipode system that drives out calcium and drives in sodium, which needs energy from sodium hydrogen ATPase, is known as calcium pump. Okay, and how? And the same mechanism also drives out calcium from the mitochondria to the cell surface. So, calcium also comes out with the help of calcium pump, and calcium also goes out of the cell with the help of this, either not this exchanger, with the help of calcium pump. So, remember, whenever calcium has to get out, exit, it is an active process. Okay, so these are hormone dependent, voltage dependent calcium channel, second messenger operated calcium channel. From your signal transduction chapter, you know few hormones like neurotransmitters and hormone like inositol triphosphate, diacylglycerol. Okay, these are all acting as second messenger for calcium. Okay, and some voltage gated sodium channel that are depending on various pH difference and electrical activity, they cause membrane depolarization. They also act as calcium influx channels. Okay, and there are few hormones and neurotransmitters like PTH, vitamin D, they also trigger calcium influx in the cell, but main thing is this sodium calcium exchanger. Okay, I will rub all this so that it's easier for you to follow. Remember, the exchanger is letting the calcium in. Next, we move on to the function of calcium. So, as I told you, calcium is the most important mineral when it comes to various functions of our body. So, there are many functions of calcium. Number one is activation of enzyme. Very important. Calmodulin is a protein you have read in your second messenger or signal transduction or hormone chapter. How it acts as a second messenger, it binds to calmodulin and it helps in activation of various kinase enzymes. Okay, and those kinase enzymes will phosphorylate the enzymes it will convert the dephosphorylated to phosphorylated form, and it will exert the biological function. Okay, so there are few enzymes that are directly activated by calcium without the intervention of calmodulin. But remember, you must be knowing now from your carbohydrate metabolism chapters that all, not carbohydrate, rather every metabolism, that all enzymes that are helping in catabolic reactions are activated in phosphorylated form, that is triggered by or activated by glucagon, and all enzymes that catalyze the anabolic pathway are activated in dephosphorylated form. Okay, if it is not clear, I will take a regulation of metabolism class where I will be activating or where I will be discussing these things in detail. Just remember, you must be knowing so many enzymes. Okay, phosphorylase kinase, glycogen synthase, those enzymes, some of them are active, some of them are inactive in phosphorylated form. So just apply your brain, but all of them, the mechanism of phosphorylating, all of them depend on calcium ion. Okay, you must be knowing from your physiology class that calcium ion also triggers the excitation contraction coupling of troponin. Okay, so I'll not be going into details of that because you know it better than me. In muscles, calcium mediates the excitation and contraction of muscle by activating the mechanism, by activating ATPase, by triggering the muscle contraction, by binding with troponin C. Alright, it helps in conduction of nerve impulse by attaching to the synapses in presynaptic and postsynaptic region, by attaching to the neurotransmitter pockets. Actually, calcium, there is something called sarcoplasmic reticulum. Okay, in sarcoplasmic reticulum, at the motor end plate, calcium ions are released along with other neurotransmitters that help in interaction of the muscle and the nerve fiber. All those are explained in details in physiology. So please, I will suggest, these are all interconnected areas. Okay, so this is one of the important function of calcium, that is nerve conduction, nerve impulse conduction. So both muscle contraction and nerve conduction and motor end plate involve calcium ions. Okay, next, synthesis of hormones. Hormones like insulin, parathormone, calcitonin, etc. are all mediated by calcium. So calcium level is very essential in secreting all these hormones. It may be so that these hormones in turn affect level of calcium, but calcium is essential in making these hormone form, okay, in secreting these hormones. Next, calcium decreases the passage of serum through capillaries. So what happens? It decreases vascular permeability. What happens in case of allergic reaction? Tissue fluid comes out of the capillaries and tissues get swelled. Okay, it comes out from intravascular to the extravascular space. This is stopped by calcium. So clinically, calcium can be used to reduce allergic exudate. So excess swelling and excess exudation of fluid can be controlled by calcium due to this property. Okay, this is a clinical property applicable not for first years, but remember, when you become an intern, all these things you will be dealing with all these things daily. Okay, so in case of allergic exudates, allergic reaction, calcium supplementation is often given. Regarding coagulation, I don't have anything else to say because you know calcium is also known as factor 4 and it helps in forming a complex with all the clotting factors, right? Next, calcium, very important when you will be reading cardiac muscle contraction both in physiology and pharmacology, the mechanism, you will be seeing that calcium is a strong inotropic agent. Okay, it prolongs systole, it causes contraction. So what happens if there is more calcium? Heart will remain in a contracted form, heart will remain in systole, and that if systole is prolonged normal than usual physiological duration, it will lead to cardiac arrest. So heart will stop beating because it will remain in a contracted form. So hypercalcemia, cardiac arrest is seen in systole. Okay, cardiac arrest means it will stop beating. So cardiac arrest are of two types. Cardiac arrest in systole means heart is in a constant contracted form, or cardiac arrest in diastole when heart is in constant relaxed form. In case of hypercalcemia, cardiac arrest is seen in systole. Next, bone and teeth. These are the two things that you already know, that calcium helps in formation. Okay. So this is a diagram, schematic diagram showing the mechanism of calcium and action of calmodulin. This is very important. Okay, you need to draw this. So please take a quick note. So calcium plus calmodulin binds to form a complex, calcium bound calmodulin. This complex activates all the kinases. So kinase becomes active kinase, and this active kinase will now phosphorylate various enzymes, and that will lead to its biological effect. Remember, this biological effect can be activated form of enzyme or it can be the inactive form of enzyme. Calcium along with calmodulin along with the kinases leads to phosphorylation. Now as you know, few enzymes are active in phosphorylated form and few enzymes are active in dephosphorylated form, or rather few enzymes are active in phosphorylated form and few enzymes are inactive in phosphorylated form. So it depends on what enzyme it is acting on. I will give you an example. As I told you, all catabolic enzymes are activated in phosphorylated form and all anabolic enzymes are inactive in phosphorylated form, so they are active in dephosphorylated form. Okay. So an example of catabolic enzyme. Catabolic enzymes means the enzymes that forms simple units, simple metabolic units, that is the enzymes or the pathways that form glucose, for example in carbohydrate metabolism. And anabolic pathways are those that forms complex compound, that is glycogen. So glycogen synthesis is an anabolic process or glycogen breakdown is a catabolic process. So glycogen synthase enzyme is an anabolic enzyme. So if it is phosphorylated, it will become inactive. So it is activated in dephosphorylated form. And glycogen phosphorylase is an enzyme that will be activated in phosphorylated form. If it sounds too much, just revise your carbohydrate metabolism chapter and it will be clear. All enzymes of glycolysis you will see will be inactive in phosphorylated form. So here is a list of enzymes that are acted or activated by calcium and mediated by calmodulin. Okay. However, these enzymes are phosphorylated. However, the phosphorylated form will be active or inactive depends on the biochemical pathway in which these enzymes are participating. Mind it. For example, glycogen synthase, of course glycogen synthase will be phosphorylated by synthase kinase, but after phosphorylation this will become inactive because it is an anabolic enzyme. Okay. I will not tell all the other enzymes over here. This is a part of your homework. Just go back, find out each enzyme, just see what pathway it is belonging to. If it belongs to a catabolic pathway, that enzyme will be activated in phosphorylated form. All phosphorylation is triggered by glucagon and all dephosphorylation are triggered by insulin. Okay. This may be too much, but for now just remember, for your calcium, for your mineral metabolism class, you just need to remember calcium helps in phosphorylation with the help of this kinase activity or calmodulin dependent kinase. So further application of this, whether the enzyme is active or inactive, you don't need to remember with regards to mineral metabolism class, but that is very important when you are going for Grand Viva because examiner will not be restricted to mineral metabolism only. Remember, calcium is a very good entry point for examiner to go into the metabolism and regulation of metabolism and all these catabolism and anabolism pathways. Okay. Next we come to the level of calcium in blood. It is very easy to remember, calcium is an emergency ion. So 911 emergency you must have seen in many American series, right? So 9 to 11 mg per dl, right? Generally 10, on an average 10 mg per dl. Now this is total amount or dry weight of calcium. If we are considering whether it is in ionic form, then any ion, it is represented by the unit MEQ per liter or milli equivalent per liter. In body, about half of that is ionized. So about 5 mg per dl is in ionized form and is metabolically active. Generally, it is seen that 10 mg per dl of calcium equal to 5 MEq per liter. You don't need to remember this conversion, but remember half of the total calcium that is present in the body is in ionized form. Okay, and 1 mg per dl of that are complexed with phosphate, bicarbonate and citrate. So these two forms are diffusible from blood to tissues. So we are breaking down the total amount of calcium. Okay, so from among 10, 9 to 11, that is on an average 10, 5 mg is in ionized form. 1 mg per dl is complexed with calcium, it's complexed with phosphate, bicarbonate and citrate. Okay, and these two forms, that is the ionized form and the total complexed with phosphate, bicarbonate and citrate, these two forms are diffusible from blood to the tissue. However, 4 mg per dl is bound to the protein and this is not diffusible. Remember, so 4, that is 40% is bound and 50% and 60% is free. Among that 60%, okay, 60% of total. So now we are taking that total 60%. So 6 mg per dl, 1 is in complex and 5 mg is in free ionized form. Now the blood level of calcium is very narrow. It is 9 to 11 mg per dl. Okay, very narrow. Slight lowering of calcium will produce features of tetany and slight raise of calcium will produce cardiac arrest. So who actually maintains these level of calcium? This is very important question. This is the next long question, that is homeostasis of calcium, which we will be taking in our next class. Now before going to the next part, you have two things to do. Number one, go and watch the vitamin D class. Okay, it's linked in the description if you have not watched it already. And till now, the notes you have taken, you should update yourself with all the nitty-gritties before I go on to the next part, that is calcium and phosphorus homeostasis. So feel free to get back to me in the comment section and I will see you in the next one. Till then, bye and take care.